In this video, I'm going to show you how to harvest water reed for thatching. G'day, welcome to Chestnut Nag. My name's Stuart Chignall, and this is a video series that I'm doing on the construction of my unplugged workshop, which is going to have a thatched roof. Half is thatched in rush, and the other half is going to be thatched in water reed, and this is how you harvest it. To start with, you need 3 pieces of wood, about arm or leg length. We're going to use these 3 pieces of wood to form a basic stand in which we're going to form the bundles. First step is to lash them into a cross so that we've got 2 short arms and 2 other arms, whatever length they are. The short arms, it doesn't really matter what length they are, it could be 6, 8, 10 inches, whatever. But if you're working as a team, it's important that everyone has the same length of short arms. So the bundles all end up being the same size, roughly. Whatever size you choose, it doesn't matter, as long as it's consistent. Once you've done that, you then take the 3rd piece and lash it to one of the short arms on the outside. And that just gives you another 3rd arm, so it will support the cross upright and means we can lay the reed into the short arms of the cross.
Right.
Now the next thing you need is something to cut the reed with. You can use something as simple as a kitchen knife, but it does need to be sharp and it will go blunt, so you need to know how to sharpen it and keep it sharp, especially if you're not the chef, because if you return a kitchen knife after you've been cutting reed with it to the kitchen, that might make for some marital strife. Something I wouldn't recommend is a scythe, for reasons which will become clear later. The best tools that I found for this job are lightweight bill hooks, or even better than that is some sort of sickle, which is of course what a sickle is for, is cutting grass-like stuff.
Something I like when it comes to choosing a blade is something that I can hold in my mouth. It just makes it a lot easier. You don't have to put your blade down and then pick it up again. However, especially with these serrated blades, that means no mustaches, because your little hairs get caught in those little teeth and it hurts, believe me.
Which means I'm going to have to shave. You're going to have 2 hands to do this job, the tool hand and the grasping hand. So, to start with, take your grasping hand and grasp a comfortable bunch of reeds. Now, you want the reeds that you grasp to be all growing relatively close together, because when you run your hand down the reeds and draw them together, if they're too far apart, you'll bend the reed too much. Once you've got your hand down, your grasping hand down near the ground level, you've brought the reeds together, you then cut them off below your hand, being careful that you don't actually cut your hand. When you're starting on the outside of a thicket of reed, the reed might be growing relatively thinly. So it may be efficient to grab another bunch of reed and repeat the same process while holding onto the first lot you cut, and keep doing that until you've got a full handful of reed cut in your hand. You then draw the reed up, and then gently as possible, so that you minimize the number of reeds that you snap, you draw the bunch that you've cut out of the surrounding uncut reeds. Now, with a good stand of reed, all the reeds will be parallel, and this will be very easy. In a stand of reed that's been affected by flood or wind, they'll be a bit messed up and it could be a bit harder. Then, with your tool hand, you run it up the bunch of reed until you get to the minimum length that you want the stalks to be. How long that is depends on what you're doing and what you're cutting, because some reed can be incredibly long. Like some of this stuff is over 2 meters tall, but mixed in with it, there's some stuff that's only about 3 or 4 foot. So I'm running my hand 3 to 4 foot up the bunch, and then I let go with the grasping hand and give my tool hand a good shake. This means that any short reed will fall out, and some of the grassy rubbish that might be in the bottom will also fall out. Now, to help this process, I'll run my grasping hand from my tool hand down the bunch to sort of strip out any of the loose stuff that hasn't fallen out of its own accord. And if there's still a bit of rubbish in there, like some grass or some broken reeds or whatever, I'll either take my fingers and sort of rake it through the bunch, or I'll take the back of my blade and comb it through the bunch. Once I've done that, tamp it, bring it up, and then you lay it into your cross. Now, I said at the start of this video that it was going to be a video about reducing blood loss. If you cut yourself with your tool, that is because you're a klutz, like me. Bleeding, you can see there. I just ran the sickle across the back of my knuckle, and that's not what I'm talking about in reducing blood loss. No, what I'm talking about is reducing the number of times that the reed itself cuts you. You don't have to worry about the reed that you're harvesting cutting you. That's why I'm running my hands up and down it quite safely without damage. It's the stalks that you leave behind that will take your blood. And that's because each one of these suckers acts a bit like a glass pipette, which means you won't just get cut by this edge, but this round circular blade, essentially, it acts a bit like a leather punch, or like I said, a glass pipette, and it can take a whole piece of skin out of your knuckle. When I first started harvesting reed, I lost so much skin off the back of my knuckles, it wasn't funny. They just bled and bled and bled. You do that for a little while and you soon adapt your technique. The way you minimize the blood loss is that when you grab each bunch of reed to cut, you always cut from inside the uncut reed, or the back of the bunch that you've just grasped. You never cut from the front of the bunch, which is all nice and clear, but also has all those little stabby things which will remove those circles of flesh from your hand. You always cut from the back. As you're going forward, you sort of trample your feet around to break those little stabby things down, but never kneel or sit down, because you will have missed one and those little stabby things in your bum hurt.
There's something I like when ow!
Now from here, you just keep working away, keep having handfuls at a time, cutting them, cleaning them as you go, laying them in the cross until you fill the cross up. So I tend to keep going until basically they start falling out. Now I clean it up a little bit and then I get roughly an arm length piece of string. I'll tie a loop in one end, take it around the bunch, put the other end through the loop, bring it back on itself, tighten it up nicely, and then tie it so there's a little slip knot there so that I don't have to cut the string to use the bundle. I can just pull on the string and then reuse that string later. Voila. You then cut a second piece of string and then go up the bundle a ways, but not too far, kind of roughly a little bit below where your hand was when you were shaking the bunches out, and then tie a second string around the bundle. And that's it. You just got to repeat that quite a few times. And so yeah, that's how you harvest reed while minimizing blood loss. Now, if you're one of my longer term subscribers or patrons, this video is being published out of sequence. If you're coming here late to the party, I'm putting this video in sequence if it's on the playlist. But the reason I'm doing that is this is Monday, the 6th of May. And on the 11th and 12th, holding a small get together. The plan is that on the Saturday we will cut reed, and on the Sunday we'll do a bunch of thatching. If you would like to come along to that, you're more than welcome. There's a link to the Facebook event that Sarah has created in the description, and you can sort of go along to that and sign up and say, yeah, I want to come. And on that will be announcements of what the plan, the more refined plan is, and what the details are and all that sort of jazz. So things like food, there'll be, I think the plan is that Sarah's going to be doing some food, but not food for the entire weekend. We have room for people to set up a swag or a tent if they want to stay the night. And other than that, just be sensible in terms of your clothing choices, like good boots and long pants and sleeves and so on, just a bit of protection when you're sort of doing manual work. Plus, it is getting colder, but there is still the chance of snakes, so boots, long pants. Other than that, I think that's pretty much it. Two last things though. I would much rather be able to work faster, lose a little bit of blood, rather than wear gloves. I also found that once I get my technique in, I don't tend to lose blood. I also often find that while wearing gloves, I tend to get hurt just as much, in some cases more, because the loss of dexterity combined with the false sense of security means I'll work a bit faster, a bit more clumsily, and then, ow! I get stabbed anyway. But you may still feel that you want to wear gloves, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's perfectly okay. Some of us are soft.
Some people are much better at wearing gloves and still working effectively. I like to wear gloves.
Some would say though that that's because you're soft and not used to manual labour. Is that your cross focus?
Nope.
I think it might be. But you're
Yeah.
asking with a grin.
That's just the way it is. No, seriously. Some people aren't used to working manually. Some people have thinner skin. Some people have a lower pain tolerance. And I would much rather have people who are interested in what we're doing here come along and participate. And if they want to wear gloves, no big deal. But the second thing I'll finish with is that when you're harvesting reed like this and some of it's been knocked flat by either flooding or wind, there's a technique that you can use to speed up the process of harvesting. Now you see this reed has got pieces going crossways in it, and here you can see they've been knocked flat by, in this case, flood, but it could happen by wind. It is easier to make the most of those if once you cut into the stand of reed, that you then work in the direction that the reeds are pointing, because then it makes it easier to cut off these ones that have been knocked flat and get them into a useful bunch. Whereas if you try coming the other way, it's just a mess, and you've got all these pointing things at you, and the base there, you need to cut them to draw them out, is way away from you. So yeah, if you're dealing with stuff that's been flattened or partially flattened, work in the direction that the reed has been pushed.